called meeting to discuss and potentially take action on the sign ordinance. Denny, if you don't mind, would you lead us in an invocation of blessing? Yes, sir. Everyone, please rise.
Our Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, Lord, we just ask you, Lord, lead and guide and direct us over this meeting today. Lord, help each one here. Help us, Lord, to understand each thing here that you give us to understand. Father, bless this city. Thank you for everything you've done in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Have the roll call, please.
Mayor Lambert,
Here.
Vice Mayor Braddock,
Here.
Councilmember Cagle,
Here.
Councilmember Manning,
Here.
Councilmember Sewell,
Here.
Interim City Manager Williams, City Attorney North.
Here.
Do notice we have some citizens with us today. We do have an opportunity for you to speak if you have a comment, question, or concern in regard to the signed ordinance that you would like to bring to the council. This would be your opportunity to do so. If you could come to this empty chair right here with the microphone and state your name and address for the record, we would have 5 minutes.
Matthew DeGlopper, 706 Pyron Lane. My only concern about the sign ordinance is about LEDs. I think, I read a little bit in there. I think that we should consider making it so that, I mean, I understand businesses need LEDs. They need to attract people to them. And with everyone having a regular sign, LEDs are the next best thing to draw them away from the competition. But I think if a business is closed, the LEDs should be off. You know, cash advance shouldn't be blinding me at 1 a.m. when they are closed. I also think I saw that static images were in there. That's important because otherwise you're going to get a lot of moving stuff, distracting people. The other thing I would like to see is a specific set number of lumens or nits on how bright the sign can be at night. Because I think that otherwise 50% brightness, like was discussed on the billboard, is subjective to how bright the manufacturer can make it to begin with. So having a specific set amount would be helpful, because then you're guaranteeing that nobody's going to say, oh, this is only at 50%, but it's still way too bright. And I think that that's not just a concern to me, but to most people who drive at night and, or have trouble with bright lights. Other than that, I think everything else is good. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do you have anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our discussion. And I'm going to start with Kenny and Brad down here at the other end of the table. If they have any comments that they'd like to make before we kind of get into the meat of all of this.
As most of you recall, and it's been some time ago that we said, well, we had the meeting and was. Some time ago we had a meeting, I don't recall the date, and John Bridger came as a direct result of the meeting we had prior to kind of come up with some standards that we needed. Ours had been in place for several years. It didn't, as Matthew kind of discussed that ordinance didn't even discuss LEDs because it was prior to that being in use. We also had some concerns about churches and how they could do their banners. A big complaint that's came to everybody on the council is temporary signage. How do how do we make that more, how do we make our sign ordinance more business friendly, but at the same time, we try to reduce clutter over time. You know, have the signage where it's more presentable. You look at several locations throughout the city that is one parcel, one piece of property in a complex, but they have 15 signs lined up down the street. So if you're actually driving down through there, you can't see a lot of the signs until you get right up on them because they're all hidden. So we worked through this, and it's like I said, it's taken longer than we planned. But we do have a proposed sign ordinance in front of you it's going to take going through a little piece by piece. It's got some, it's our current ordinance, but it's also got the changes listed and what we potentially wanted to strike out. There's plenty of room for discussion and some additions if we need them. What we did on the temporary signs, because the problem that we had there was the 30 days, you know, and then add another period. You got 2 30-day periods. What we wanted to do, in addition to that, and not count that as your normal temporary sign period, was take the 4th week of November through Christmas. And just, that would be part, you know, that wouldn't be counted towards your 2 30-day periods. Because that's when a lot of people that we've got feedback from wants to do extra advertising and so on. We also, like the wind-driven flags, things of that nature, which is also extremely common. We wanted to be able to allow those, especially for grand openings and things of that nature, but on a limited basis and make it a permitted use. And you'll see those throughout the ordinance as we did the changes, especially for things that were prohibited. One of the common things that was prohibited that we've heard from our small businesses, our small restaurants, were they weren't even supposed to have like a sandwich style board out front advertising what their daily special was. So that kind of shows you how dated the ordinance was, and it's time to make some changes. And anything you guys would like to add would be a lot of help. It was just, we were trying to get some stuff together over the last several months and some ideas moving forward.
I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, rather than jumping back and forth through this booklet here, I thought we'd just start on page 1 and just go through it real quick. And I think this is the first time any of the council has seen these proposed changes. How about just going through here, and like I said, go over the changes that were made, recommendations, etc.
Okay.
And if any of the council, I think if any of us have any questions as we're going along, let's just go ahead and ask them instead of waiting to the end. That's just my opinion.
No, I think that's a good way to go, just page by page, and that will reduce the skipping around. And if you, when we get to the end, if there's something that maybe we haven't addressed, certainly council, feel free to chime in and say, hey, what about X, Y, Z, whatever that might be. So,
What I was gonna ask, did you, let me go, I can see you over here. But on the yard sale signs, when people have yard sales, what did you do again?
I'll have to go back there and look yard sale specific, SNOP type signs. There is a provision in here for that specifically talks about SNOP signs.
All right.
all right, looks like the first change is going to be, when you get past the title page, page 111, there is a change in regard to ground signage, freestanding detached sign.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm calling out, is there a section number for that?
Yes, it's section 108. A6, yes.
A6.
Uh-huh.
And basically what the pictures on there will depict, if you look at your photo that you have in front of you, a rough estimate, and something similar to that would be the Jones Memorial sign. That way you just still don't have that square box sitting up on a small pole. It actually gives the sign some size. So that was kind of the example, to dress it up.
Mhm.
All right, what about these people that, just going into business, can't afford this type of sign? They just have to use a small sign, what are you gonna do about that?
Well, this is for new construction or new signs that come in. It's not for existing signs. So, I mean, if they're gonna build a building, they'll have the sign ordinance. This is just like anybody else.
Yeah, I know that, but I was asking, what about a business just going in business, can't afford to put this type of sign
And
up?
if they want a sign, they're gonna have to budget that as
Cost
part
of
of
business.
Yeah, part of the process.
That's right.
Well, let me ask you this, you touched on this, is there gonna be a time limit on businesses that are already in a 5-year deal or something to change what signage they have? Because we're gonna clean up East Ridge, you're gonna have to do
Yeah.
something like that.
I think Hal had looked into that, and basically those people who, if we adopt something that says pole signs are not allowed, that are 25 feet high,
Right.
those people will be grandfathered in.
Right.
And there's really nothing we could do. I mean, we could potentially offer some kind of program where we can help them to make the change over to become a conforming sign, but we can't force them to do anything until,
They should
Until they
close.
change the
Until they change
sign,
the
until the
sign.
sign changes ownership, for example, things like that.
And that's some of the provisions that there is some provision on here if it becomes, if it goes out of service and it has to be replaced, or they want to change it, and it's a significant change, then they would have to meet whatever the current standard is. But there's, as I was saying, if you want to add additional provision, whether it be ownership or whatever the case may be, that could be put into the enforcement part of it.
okay.
And, another thing on, pole signs, like we got down on the freeway, like restaurants we got, just like Bass Pro Shop, they'll probably have a big pole sign. Are they gonna have to change over this type of sign too,
No, sir, towards the back of the ordinance, we actually have a district, and that's gonna be within a half mile of the interstate. Those pole signs are gonna remain.
Okay.
Pole signs that are unsafe now, I know there's one particular on Ringo Road right now. I'm gonna give you the address after this meeting, but, will they be able to repair those? Or are they gonna have to come down to meet this, cause this one is very unsafe, especially when the wind blows.
Well, if
You
it,
might know what I'm talking about.
if it's gonna require replacement or a significant repair cost, which we would need to determine, you know, what, if we're gonna do like a third or 50% or whatever, how we wanna decide that. If it met whatever criteria that you all decide, then they would have to either replace it or repair it. And replacement would be, of course, the ideal thing to do, but if it's a minor repair, then I don't know, replacement would be the feasible thing to enforce.
but like you said, well, those that's up now, it's been fathered already.
As long as they're legal, they were legal at the time of adoption, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we see, again, in section 108A6, the change in ground signage. There is, in A7, there is a strike-through monument signage.
That's still an option, and the reason why, there's certain areas that monument signs would be successful.
Okay.
What's it struck through here for?
Because it was just an extra option, because it was in our old one. And when looking at it, we was trying to figure out what's the best looking sign. So we were
Okay.
just gonna decide if y'all wanted to keep monument signs, or if ideally, we wanted to eliminate pole signs. That was the ultimate goal. But
And
if
I'm right there with you.
If you want to have another option as a monument sign, it's just, do you want this just sitting straight on the ground and it being 4 foot tall and being a square box? So if you do more of the freestanding ground sign, it can be decorated a little bit better than sometimes just your
So
single.
would you not agree on some places that you couldn't have this type of ground sign sitting down? Some of the places that, up, say up towards East Ridge, up towards the tunnel, stuff up there?
Are you
People
referring
wouldn't be able
to,
see it.
are you referring to a complex,
Mhm.
like as a complex that's got multiple tenants?
Yes, sir.
Well, then you wouldn't have any of these signs anyway. You would have what you would call a directory sign for the one piece of property. So the directory sign would be like a marquee that had all of them in there listed. They wouldn't have individual monument signs or even freestanding signs.
Okay, so, the monument signage is potentially eliminated with this, although there's no obligation to eliminate that if, and really the principal difference, if I'm understanding correctly, between this and ground sign is going to be the sign itself. The advertisement's basically gonna be right on the ground instead of having supporting structure underneath it.
That's
So,
Exposed. Right.
Yes, sir.
of course there will, yeah. Of course, there would be some kind of obvious foundation underneath the sign, but there wouldn't be a pole or a set of poles covered with something encased in something.
And if I recall, the discussion that we had with John about this was, if you, and his thought, because he's also worked with the city and with Collegedale and on some newer things as well, so that's kind of how we were able to work through this, because he had already been through some of it. And he said, if you have ground mounted signs and monument signs, then yes, you're changing the way, you're taking pole signs away, but you don't really have any uniformity. It's still, you can have this, or you can have this, and then all your designs are changing. So instead of having stuff that's got a maximum and a minimum height, then you're having two different categories with a maximum and a minimum. So, I mean, still an option, but if I recall his explanation.
Understood. Okay, it looks like the next thing is going to be what we've already alluded to, would be 108A10, the pole sign.
If you don't mind, let's go back up to the off-premise sign.
Sure.
I think I would like to put a moratorium on off-premise signs. We've got enough of it. I mean, if you started up in the tunnels and go down to the Tennessee-Georgia line, I think there's an excess of 30. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go ahead and try to get it started on doing something. We've got enough billboards and we've got enough off-premises signs.
Yeah, I won't argue with that.
So, so I would like to propose in reference to section, what is it, 108? Paragraph 9, section 108, yeah. Paragraph, section A, paragraph 9, excuse me, no, back up, paragraph 7. I propose to put a moratorium on off-premise signage.
How would we address that in terms of this sign ordinance? what would be the best way to impose a moratorium, but
You're talking about a moratorium or a prohibition that you might revisit later on, which are two separate things. Moratorium, to me, contemplates temporary prohibition as opposed to a long-term prohibition. Moratorium implies that at some point you're gonna lift it and go back and allow these things. So I guess we need some guidance on that.
I mean, I'm in favor of, even if we did a prohibition, the council could always go back and revisit it, correct?
Yeah. That and any other aspect of the sign ordinance.
And-
But understand that these existing signs would be grandfathered. as
Yeah,
well.
exactly, yes, yes. I just don't want to see any more.
Now, would that include,
The half mile
billboards?
radius.
Do what?
What, he was saying they were around the interstate area, they were still allowing.
Pole signs.
Pole signs.
Well, I'm talking about off-premise signs, okay? Not on-premise, but off-premise. I think we ought to just put a moratorium on any further off-premise signs, to include no more double stacking of existing billboards or signage.
And that would actually be section 110,
Section
on page 120. It's the section that references off-premises signs. That's just the definitions in the beginning.
Okay.
Section
All right.
110, page 120.
120.
Sorry about that, then.
That's all right.
I guess we'll deal with it whenever we get there. Okay. We'll revisit it.
All right, so in terms of this first couple of pages, the definitions, so the definition of a ground sign has been tweaked a little bit. The monument sign could or could not be removed, and then the pole sign also has been tweaked a little. And that gets us through page 111. Starting on page 112, you see some of the substantive changes to what would or would not be allowed, I believe. The first of those is going to be down at, get my section and everything right here. That's okay, no, I understand why it would be helpful to have all that information.
But 112 is still a continuation of the definition.
Oh, it is, yes, I'm sorry, it sure is.
It's still
The big
definitions.
space, the big space at the bottom of 111 threw me off. I thought that looked like a natural ending point, and then we pick up. Yes, you're correct.
What
So,
is a Snyder sign? Is that the,
It's basically a sign that's like a made sign that you put on, you know, the people advertise yard sales, they put them on posts, they paint them, it's not an actual built, constructed sign.
be almost like a political sign, that kind of thing, is that what?
Could be, yes.
Yeah. Well, again, political
They're-
signs.
they're-
are not
they're
gonna
more-
be
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about in
that's-
that. That's
yeah.
a totally separate issue. I'm just saying, just for a
Stop
point of
signs,
reference.
what you see is more or less, and the issues that we've had, and Terry and them can address that further, is you drive down the road on Friday afternoon, and they're advertising every yard sale on every street in the city on hot pink, yellow, purple, construction paper, or poster board.
Whatever they have handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stuck on telephone pole.
Stuff on.
Are you saying that you don't want them to have the yard sale signs, or, I mean, what are you saying here?
Well, that's completely up to you guys. Currently, they are not allowed.
Window whip, and I've got no problem with When did we ever meet and rule against they couldn't have yard sale signs?
Well, the signage and stuff on the poles would have been, anybody have the old sign ordinance information when that was adopted?
I thought when they come up and paid your permit to have a yard sign, that
Yeah.
they were about to put
They
them
put
up
it
at
out, put 'em
5
up.
a.m. As long as it's down before Monday morning.
Yeah.
Terry, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, you cannot have pole signs, you have stick in the ground signs.
Yeah.
In the yard sale ordinance, there's stipulations on advertising as far as how many signs and where they can be placed. As far as, like, if you're even putting it on somebody else's property, you have to have approval from that person.
But the yard sign is legal as long as it's not on a telephone pole.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple of references in here to 2002 and 2005. So, talking at least 10 years old. Okay, so the temporary signage definition has been changed a bit as well.
I would like to reference something,
Yes.
this is not in here, and this is something Brad and I had discussed. In section 109, sign permits. Currently, it states that the sign permit is required of any person or entity that desires to erect a sign placed on premises. The fee for the sign permit is directly proportional to the total construction cost of the sign to be built.
What page you on?
113.
113. 113B.
When we do the fees, we want to set that as a fee schedule instead of put it like in the sign ordinance, because that's something else we're working on, the total is construction fees. And instead of having it in different ordinances, we would like to have it as one, if that's possible. All of our construction fees and everything done together. That's something I have to work with Hal on, make sure that's possible.
But B represents the way it's done now,
Yes.
that's no modification.
No, it's not. It would just be, instead of having the fee listed that way in here, which is not, but everybody, because sometimes they say, hey, we want the ordinance, but is the fee in here? But we want to keep that together with everything.
But when they come in now, they have to tell you how much the cost, construction cost is going to be?
They have to present that, yes.
How do they present it by?
Estimate, they actually, we have to have a drawing and everything of the sign, from a sign company.
Okay.
All right, so staying on that page, unless there's something that someone wanted to talk about prior to, staying on page 113, in the section entitled Intent, down at the bottom of the page in item D, there's some text that has been added. In addition to the allowable on-premise signs for churches, schools, nonprofit service, and community organizations, a directional sign may be located off-site on private property to assist in locating these uses. This sign is limited to 5 square feet in size, shall not exceed 30 inches in height, and shall not be illuminated. This sign shall not block the sight distance or view of vehicles traversing the public right-of-way. The location of the sign structure must be approved by the director prior to its construction.
Shall not be illuminated?
Yeah.
That's an addition to the on-premises sign.
So Mark, would this go against what you're going to do about the off-premises sign?
No, I don't think it should, because these are on premises.
I know that, but this is, they're
This
going to
one.
put these off-premises.
You don't pay them,
This would be a sign, for example, on Ringo Road that says turn left for so-and-so Baptist Church or something that's, 4 blocks away. It wouldn't be their regular on-premise sign.
Imagine there would have to be some sort of size requirement that.
Here they got a
Going to-
limit of 5 square foot, so,
Right, I'm talking about, but for,
but
yeah,
for his,
what he, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right, what he was talking about
Yeah.
earlier.
And that's not for everybody, it's just for those,
nonprofit. But there's a lot of those up down Ringo Road.
there is. But,
Then his off premises.
But ideally, it's
could be
like-
a lot of those up down Ringo Road.
and that's where they would be put, but
Yeah.
like if you had a church that's, you know, you look around Dabney and all those places that's got churches that's, you know, way off the beaten path. That's not what that's designed for. But it's clearly up to you guys.
Okay.
That goes back to his moratorium on stop
Absolutely.
all.
Absolutely.
Off-premise sign.
You could
I was
word it in such
thinking,
a
I was
way.
thinking mainly to.
Oh, I know what you were thinking about, but
Yeah.
this right here,
Yeah.
Change.
yeah. that
You can
changed.
word it in such a way where it exempts items in section 109D or something.
Or you could put possible to, and make it a use on review or an added use or,
True.
something like that.
All right, we'll move on if there are no other questions. To page 114, item G, detached sign standards. And I'm just gonna turn that right on over to Kenny. Rather than read all of, because this begins a substantial section of revised information.
Right, and that's kind of what I was, you know, just briefly discussing when we started, and it's basing it on tax parcel. And we'll use, there's a piece of property right across from SunTrust Bank, everybody know where that little strip mall area is. They have a marquee out front,
Mhm.
all right? You go on down to around Ridgewood Village, and Ridgewood Village doesn't, all right? But that's one parcel. Except for, you know, the other, you know, maybe the little businesses that are out front, like the restaurants and stuff. But ideally, to eliminate the clutter that we currently have and offering every single business the opportunity to put a sign as long as it meets the setback requirements, would be for those to have more like a marquee or, in addition to their building frontage, their building signs.
All right, what, it's like, the gentleman, he just finally gave up. He was paying $800 a month, so he kept getting harassed about his sign being on the back of his truck, advertising. What's the deal with this? If, like, say, somebody's got one on their truck, you don't take it off, it stays on there.
Yeah, it's coming up in under temporary signage. I think we addressed some of those issues in there.
But if he drives his truck back and forth every day, it don't stay there all the time. He's not here no more, he left because he's paying $800 a month, and he's getting harassed about it. So he said, fisheries don't want my business, I'm not gonna pay no $800 a month to try to advertise before I can stay in business, because it hurt his business, shut his business down, so he just left. So we're losing customers that way too.
It sounds like that we will most definitely address that as we go further in the, through this information, the revised packet that we have. There's obviously gonna be a lot of reading involved in this, and council, we don't have to stay right here and, spend 15 minutes reading this. Certainly, we don't have to take any action. A lot of this will take time to digest. So.
No, what we need to do it is ASAP.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and I apologize,
Yeah.
these were ready, but I was out of the country, so I do apologize.
That's a good reason. That's a good reason.
And like I say, we've been working on that LED portion, and I was trying to get it scheduled before John could be here. Now, when we actually have our first main meeting on something like this, I do want him here,
Okay.
because he can, since he's worked with every municipality, basically throughout these, and developing, doing the exact same thing we're doing right now.
The elimination, how can we hardly go against what the state has already stuck on the people that's building the illuminated signs? So how can we set ordinance to go against them?
Well,
Because
you can
that-
always
the people
be,
that's buying them, that's all they've got to go by till they come to us, but then that would eliminate, that would seem like we would be discriminating against the person making the LED signs
We will be.
under their state's guidelines.
well, you can always be more stringent than technically you can be. You have that right as a council to make those decisions.
Yeah, you can't be arbitrary, you need to have a defined public purpose in doing so. And what I've understood to be articulated is, for example, these signs, the brightness of these signs and distraction for drivers and things like that.
And all of the new signs, and because I actually went around and asked and talked to some companies, and even the sign that was discussed up at Spring Creek and Ringo Road, I actually talked to them. It's much, and I haven't seen it when it's raining at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was kind of some of the complaint. If you'll notice, the sign has slowed down considerably since that first meeting we had, and it has been dimmed. They all have the controls on it to be able to dim it down. So if you do get a complaint, you can, especially all the newer ones, you can have that adjusted.
What do you do with these? It don't adjust.
This last sign that we approved, it supposedly has something on there that when it gets nighttime, it
It
dims
reduces
itself.
by so much percentage.
Well, that's part
And
of
if that's not enough,
Right.
And
automatic.
if we say it's not enough, then we can have them do it more probably.
As we continue through this, this particular section, which is G, detached sign standards, is there anything else that you want to point out in particular, Kenny, or?
Yes, I would like to, on A, maximum size, 200 square feet per sign. However, having properties that have no less than 100,000 square feet in gross leasable space or gross leasable area. And then if they do, then they can have 300 square feet of total sign area. After Brad and I was discussing, we would like to potentially propose reducing that 100,000 to 80,000 square feet.
All right, let me ask you a question on that. What if people don't have that much room at the business they got open, what do you do in the case of that?
Look, if,
They would have 200 at
Yeah,
that
they're
point,
limited to 200.
not 300. We're just setting the limits of 200 for 80,000 and under, 300 for 80,000 and over.
But I know a lot of these businesses we got here in this street, they don't have a lot of places, don't have a whole lot of parking, and they don't have big lots, so they just got so many, 4 or 5 couple places.
A lot of
they can park.
this is for new construction.
Well, we don't have a lot of businesses, if any, here in East Ridge that have 100,000 square feet.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
Very,
The only one that would come to mind would be like At Home. I think it's probably pretty close to it.
Then that, when we discussed, Kenny, or either one of you wants to answer, that we discussed Thursday night, we agreed to let him please sign that, we grandfathered him in, right? That's what we voted on.
I don't think we took action on the gentleman who, Sprouse, I think was his name.
You're talking about the LED?
Yeah, they
Oh,
did.
okay, yes, I'm sorry.
I think we grandfathered his in, because he's already had his,
Well, it's grandfathered in because action has already been taken and we haven't done
That's what I
anything
was
here.
asking.
Yeah, so, yeah. All right, is there anything else in this section
Yeah, I have, just want to bring something up. This particular section is a quarter mile from the interstate. Having to deal with pole signs. A maximum of 30 feet from ground elevation. How's that going to impact the Bass Pro?
It's gonna hurt it.
Well, not
Their signage is
necessarily,
approved
but,
already, though.
but, it, no, it's not up. So, does it make a difference if it's attached to the building or not attached to the building? On the height and size requirements, is there a difference there or no?
Yeah.
Do you know what they intend to do with their sign?
No,
Okay.
not really.
The only reason I say that is when we were in, I think you were
Way back the
you
first
just
one,
came
yeah.
on board.
Mhm.
And we were sitting here and the question was asked, they asked the question, how high can we build a sign?
Mhm.
Yeah, because they were asking about, because it's gonna be the lookout tower or the fire tower. And that was determined whether they were gonna be able to locate the sign at the top or bring the sign down, the actual signage itself, down towards lower in the structure. Because they've had to do that in other areas. Now, they can always go through BZA and have a variance basically, but it's just, you can set the limit on maximum height. You can rate increase it.
I was strictly asking the question.
To give you an example, College Dale is around 60 feet maximum height. And Chattanooga's 30.
Okay.
Good.
One thing about Cottingdale and Chattanooga both, all their stuff is packed right together, so it'd be a lot of difference between it and Chattanooga too.
How high is the Cracker Barrel sign?
Oh, currently, they're 60. No,
So
they're
it's double what our,
But it would be grandfathered.
Right.
Okay.
How about the Oceana sign standing with nothing on it?
That actually needs to be removed.
that's the same thing.
Is
That'd
it,
be a problem.
It'd be grandfathered in too.
there's nothing on it?
It's an abandoned sign.
Abandoned sign.
Yeah.
The Bass Pro, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they buy a piece of property when you're coming right before you get, when you're coming into Kansas Jordan now, there's isn't that where the sign's gonna go?
I
That's what I
don't,
was told, I don't know.
we haven't been given much indication where the sign's going.
What's that?
The only signage we have is the actual building signage itself.
Okay, well, from what I understand, they bought there's a piece of property right there when you come off of Wright Street, right next to it.
That small square.
That small square, I
Right.
heard they were gonna do something there, but I don't know.
Would that be considered an off-premise sign? Even though they own it?
Yes, he would.
Yeah, sure.
How far is that tractor property from the main location?
Well, is it gonna be the Bass Pro or is it gonna be the development sign for the whole development?
I don't know, I heard it's gonna be a waterfall and all that, so I don't know.
Right, and if you
Could be.
think about the other development that's been done, they have that large marquee that sits out in front of the development. That would be a little different because it's for the whole development.
I do have a question, going back to the Shoney sign and Cracker Barrel and a couple of those that we know are very, very tall. What would constitute, I mean, if there was a windstorm and it did some significant damage to the Cracker Barrel sign or the Waffle House sign or whatever, choose one down there. How much work, I mean, if they had to completely replace the actual sign on top, does that remove their grandfather status because they have to completely replace that?
Well, I mean, it's not been set yet whether they can or can't.
Well, that's the anticipation.
Right.
If you have to remove or replace an existing sign, then grandfather provision no
Then it would
longer.
be gone. But, you know, and
I mean, if the pole was knocked down, is that what you're talking about, or just the top?
I was thinking about the sign. I remember when we had the tornado that came through 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah,
now.
tore a lot
I
of
remember
it.
it did a lot of damage to the Burger King sign.
Yeah.
And they had to replace that, because it blew the panels out and it was just an empty sign.
I would say, to me, as if the pole completely was knocked down or something like that. I mean, because you're gonna have high winds that are gonna blow that stuff out.
I don't wanna hurt, I don't wanna hurt the Cracker Barrel's ability to go back in and just simply replace.
Well, you're gonna get some pushback because Mr. Cracker Barrel's gonna be grandfathered in at 75 feet.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Zaxby wants his at 75 feet to be comparable. You say, no, yours can only be less than half that. So, like I said, you're gonna get some pushback from these new businesses coming in. But you can make the grandfather provisions however you want to. You can say that the actual sign has to come down and be replaced. You know, what if it's a wiring, simply the wiring, they have to redo the sign, but they're gonna do it exactly the way it is. You know, we can refine those definitional terms. That's no problem.
Well,
Could we?
all I would say is tell Mr. Zaxby's or whoever, well, you should have got it in East Ridge when Cracker Barrel did. And you'd be grandfather too. So,